Plug and Pay, a show where we bring you the latest and greatest of global payroll. I'm Angelique, Payzar's head of content, and I'm here today with my co-host, Max, our head of service delivery. How are you doing today, Max?
The sun is shining outside, Angelique. The sun is shining in my heart. I see two very happy faces on the call, so I could not be better, actually. And today we have our guest, but I might even call her a friend, Cari Breitinger, Director of HRIS and Payroll at Belfor Property Restoration, who I was fortunate enough to meet last week in Florida at the Payroll Leaders Conference by Payo. So I'm really, really thrilled.
Thank you so much, both of you. It's good to be here.
Yes, we're excited. I haven't had the pleasure to meet you in person yet, but hopefully at a future event. And well, from what I know about you, you have a very extensive career in global payroll. So I would love if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey.
Great, great. Well, thank you for having me. I have been in the payroll industry for over 44 years and have ventured into the global space about 17 years ago at my current employer, Belfor, on a small scale as we acquired a company in Canada. So I like to say, even though I'm not global, max size global, I do get to cross a border and handle some other things. And as well, we've got some opportunities that I've been involved in over the course of my career here as we've grown Belfor globally. But I don't have direct payroll processing responsibilities for it. It didn't make sense. We hand it off to somebody that is more of an expert at that. So Belfor, a little sense about Belfor. We have 14,000 employees. We are in 23 countries, I believe, right now. And those global payrolls range from 3 people to 2,000 people, depending on where you are. So it's a unique opportunity, and I love it, and I just keep learning every day.
Great. Thanks, Cari. And about learning every day, you were also fortunate enough. Fortune might mean that you have fortune playing a role, but you actually achieved it with your own team. You've won a Prism Award last week at the Payroll Leaders Conference. So before we dive into the topic, I first want to just clap and congratulate you and the team. So we don't just have Cari, but her whole team won the award. Can you tell us a little bit what the award was for, Cari?
Right. So Payo is of course the leader in payroll education, and they put out a Prism Award annually, 4 components to it, and then an overall winner if you are fortunate enough to strategically transform something in your payroll unit, your operation. So certainly, as payroll professionals, we all do that every single day of our lives. And I took the chance this year and applied for some managerial transformation that I went through here at Belfor, as I'm getting ready to, I call it exit stage left. That's what Patricia keeps telling me. I'm exiting stage left in my career. And so building up the people behind me is important, and putting the right people in place. So I won Prism for the managerial transformation of the department.
That's great. I think that's a great example of how you manage kind of, when you exit on the left, someone probably enters the stage on the right, Cari, but you do need to prepare someone because you have a wealth of experience, a fantastic scope, and you can't just say to someone, hey, tomorrow you'll take on my role. So I think it's a great example of how you do it. And you have a career spanning over decades while still being so young, Cari.
Love that. Thank you.
Exactly. So you will have probably witnessed a lot of evolution and change, but something we're also passionate about is, why do you think payroll still faces kind of the old stereotype of a back office function? And what can we do to bring that function into the spotlight, do you think?
Well, Max, you and I have talked about this before, and it really is a challenge, I think, for every payroll professional to make that leap. And we all fall into everybody thinks it's the easy button, right? And when we think about that, to me, that means that you're looking at that payroll as a transactional process. And payroll is not transactional. Payroll is operational. And so I think the lack of the understanding of our leaders of just how payroll fits into the operational perspective of the company, not just I'm keying time, I'm putting in tax documents, I'm kicking something out, and everybody's getting paid. That's not what payroll does. So when we think about that, we have to recognize in ourselves that we are not a back office function. And then we need to control a narrative. What are we out there doing? We need to sell it. So we need to become salespeople. We need to sell ourselves. We need to sell our product. We need to educate everybody on what we do. I like to drop tidbits of information.
Oh.
I was asked to speak many years ago at a general manager boot camp. In North America, we have 185 offices, and the leadership within those offices transitions quite frequently. So we move people from an estimator role into a general manager role, but nobody tells them what it's like to be a manager. So we bring them all together and we do this boot camp, and they asked me to speak on payroll, and I chose that year. My topic was going to be regulatory. And the gentleman walked away from that meeting with a newfound respect for payroll when they realized in the US, the payroll department is managed and regulated by 9 federal agencies. So it's not just your leadership at your company. Like to say I got a lot of bosses, 9 plus whatever I have at the in the company. That's a lot. And when they start thinking about all the rules that are behind payroll, then they start thinking about what are you doing differently? How are you perceived differently? And that's what we need to do. So we just need to educate. We need to talk about what we do.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think, well, both of you mentioned the fact that payroll sits in the middle of so many different critical areas. And I think you already touched a little bit upon this, but for organizations who, want to drive that strategic value, what do you think are those main opportunities that they can do that, and how?
There are a lot. There really are a lot. And again, we talk a lot in the payroll world as they want a seat at the table. That's where strategy is designed, right? And so while we may not have a seat at the C-suite, we certainly can be feeding them that same information that I was just talking about. What exists out there? Nobody knows everything. CEO of the company doesn't know everything. He's got a lot of powerful people feeding him a lot of great information so that he's making good decisions, right? You want to be one of those people. So one of the things I like to do here is we have, when I started at Belfor, there were 20 offices and 1,200 people in the US. So now, again, we're a global organization. We've grown all of this. Well, all of that takes a lot of information to be presented to help the strategy of where does the company want to go? Not payroll, but where's the strategy of the company? And so I oftentimes will sit here and say, you want to open up a brand new office. Well, let's look at, and I'm going to speak in the North America region. Let's look at Tennessee because they have this suite of tax credits.
And Nashville, great music.
Yeah. Or do we want to go to Florida where the corporate tax rate's higher and you're not going to get the bang for your buck? And so you start having those kind of conversations. Where does it make sense? How can I, at the payroll department level, redefine what I do on an annual basis to drive the bottom line? How can I reduce headcount? How can I increase headcount? How can I leverage new software in there to make things a little differently and those work a little differently? And all of that is what drives where we're going to go. And so those are the conversations you need to have.
Yeah, I like it. And I actually dislike the conversation on the seat at the table. Like you've also mentioned, the table is already full. The room is full. Let's be realistic. In which organization, unless you're this payroll is your core business, is payroll really going to have a seat at the table? Like it's pursuing utopia. However, if you want to have a seat at the table, I think you want to support the people at the table with the right data. Actually, Angelique and I just interviewed one of our valued customers this morning, and they said that 80% of the cost of the company is resulting out of a GL file coming out of payroll.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine if you can make the data that sits beneath that GL file accessible to the decision makers in a way that they want to have access to it? Your seat at the table is data, right? And then you're actually strategically driving decisions there. So if we talk about data, Cari, what's kind of your experience of utilizing the data that you have, the wealth of data, to kind of support decision making from those leaders within the organization?
Well, from my perspective, the data that we provide is obviously a lot of just, labor and dollars. So we want to know headcount. That's core. Everybody always wants to know that. Back in the day, I'm going to say back in the day, 20 years ago, I used to have to provide a report to our Germany partners on changes in headcount. And they didn't want to know changes just by I added 5 people and I lost 5 people. They wanted to know by job description or by job title, by office, who'd you hire, who'd you lose, and what was the cost savings or expense of those changes. That was done every single month. That is, in my world, I created a report. For lack of a better word, we called it the Germany report.
Okay.
We have not been partnered with this company out of Germany. It was called Haniel for 17 years. I still run that report.
Really?
The people here still call it the Germany report. And it is it's just a data dump of data. And then once you pull all that data out of the system, then we run macros over it, pivots over it, and we get them all of the wonderful information they need. This week, they want to know, they have a lot of questions on overtime in Canada as opposed to the US. So who's getting the overtime? How much are they getting, salary people, those kind of things. So we provide them all the labor dynamics that you can imagine it would be to redirect processes, redirect staff. If we are, I would love, and I said this and I don't have the opportunity now, but I would love to find the opportunity to dump sales information into those same data sets. And I think if I can ever get that to happen, that really will drive the strategy, will drive what payroll can do. I can say you had $1 billion in sales in North America and you had 500 people, and that's not comparative and it's not realistic in any way, shape, or form. But where are your sales? You're growing. You didn't even realize you're growing in California. But do you have enough employees? Or maybe you have too many. Maybe we need to move some people somewhere else. So there are a lot of big decisions that can be made, and payroll does have an absolute role in making those decisions.
Absolutely.
Definitely. And I think, so we've talked quite a bit now about on a strategic level, raising the visibility. But I also wanted to ask you, Cari, a little bit about raising visibility of payroll on a more cultural and employee level. I was listening to another podcast that you were on recently, and you mentioned a bit about, Belfor and the type of work that some of the employees are doing, including working on solving disasters and, other really intense type of work. So I was curious to know, what do your payroll team do, or what could others do to raise the visibility of payroll across the workforce and kind of build that trust and credibility within the team?
Right. So right now, I don't know if you heard, but we had a hurricane come through. And it devastated areas of the country that we knew would be impacted, but not nearly as bad as that they were. Category 4 hurricane is pretty problematic, especially around the Gulf Coast. But it really is going up into or went up into the Midwest, Mideast area, and impacted states all the way up through Tennessee. And of course the Carolinas. It's all over the news here in the US. And so what I try to tell people when they come into my payroll department is that we're not a department that sits behind a computer. We're not a department that just crunches numbers. The company itself, Belfor itself, is a benevolent company. We are empathetic. We go out there and we take care of people. And that culture is driven, that message is driven by our CEO all the time. And I think as a company, if we drill that from top down, we set the expectation from top down, you you get a different kind of employee experience. So in the payroll department, I remind people all the time that you are not, again, just number crunchers, but you are holding everybody's livelihood in your hand. If you don't do what you need to do, if you don't get paid, or if the employees don't get paid, they're not going to work, they're not going to buy food, they're not going to buy houses, they're going to be unhappy, and it all sits on you. No pressure. But it all sits on you. And so we want to make sure that we're taking care of that. One of the stories that I love to tell about to my team members so that they understand the company culture and they embrace it is I'm going to say maybe 15 years ago, there was a weather event in a city, a tornado event, and we respond to fire, flood, storms, all of it. In a school, the tornado was headed directly for elementary school. And so fortunately, the city that was affected was Henryville, Indiana, I believe. And so fortunately, the school got all the students over onto the west side of the school, into the gym, which is their disaster preparedness place. Everybody was safe. Unfortunately, the tornado direct impact to the east side of the school. So truly amazing pictures, if you can imagine. Half the school was totally decimated. Half the school is perfectly standing, and everybody was safe, thank God. So we do a lot of educational institutions as our core book of business, and we went in to start cleaning up. And one of our frontline workers, a carpenter, was picking up a piece of wood, and on the ground underneath a piece of wood was a goldfish bowl with the goldfish still in it, just swimming around like nothing happened. And he was amazed. And so he picks up the goldfish bowl. Everybody's amazed that this thing has happened. He takes it. He doesn't know what to do with it. He takes it home. He names it Henry. And after the school was repaired, it reopened for fall classes. So we did a total restoration over the course of the summer. Grand reopening. He walks in with the goldfish.
No way.
The goldfish was in a classroom that at that point was full of second graders, totally traumatized by what they experienced. When he walked in with Henry, the kids are now in the third grade, completely fell apart. They had safety and security again. Everything, that was it. Everything was going to be okay now. Henry was saved. And those are the kind of stories that come out of what we do all the time. I tell stories about the guys going into a building after it was destroyed, looking for a grandmother's wedding ring set because she was on her hand for all of those years. She took it off to wash her hands, and then something very bad happened, and she was absolutely distraught. They found the wedding rings, and they returned them to her. Those are the kind of stories. And so I tell my people, if that's the kind of business culture we're in, that's what you have to emulate. And I think from a company standpoint, we all need to have those discussions. Nobody wants to work in a toxic environment. I mean, it's not it. And the CEO doesn't wake up every morning and say, how am I going to make everybody miserable today? That's not on his agenda. He's got a lot of other things to do, right? And so we just need to, as managers, we need to keep elevating that culture. We need to keep sending that message that we're all here for each other.
I think that's an amazing example of a culture of care, right? For each other, for the environment, and for other people. I think I could never name a goldfish anything else than Henry now. Amazing. I remember, which makes me very guilty now, Cari. I once had a goldfish, and then I went on vacation with my family. It went to my grandma. I never picked it up afterwards. His name was Ricky. So,
Oh,
Ricky, if you're there in goldfish heaven, I am truly sorry about what I did to you, Ricky. The next time there'll be a Henry, and I'll take care of them.
there you
But
go.
all of that is, I think it's really important to understand as a payroll organization to understand the culture, right? I think you and I worked, the different types of organizations. I still remember working at companies where it was kind of formal, where there was a culture of care on a slide pack, Cari, and everyone can create a wonderful slide pack. But then actually walk the talk, I was sometimes like, well, care. Well, it's a great slide pack.
Right.
But then how do you tap in as a payroll department to deliver care? And I think it's sometimes very practical stuff that actually I also showed you last week at the Payroll Leaders Conference is like, how do you deal with employee questions? Are you going to send them an automated ticket response to say, we will respond to your inquiry in the next 24 hours, right? What if the frontline workers who are there would say, well, we'll respond to you in the next 24 hours, right?
Exactly.
That's not what you're going to do. They want instant because their customers want it. So you probably deliver the same type of experience to the workforce as payroll, right?
Exactly. Exactly. We do. So as a matter of fact, yesterday I was on a demonstration of a help desk software. And one of their big selling points on their slide deck was that exact message.
Oh,
Somebody can call into the phone and they're going to get this automated message back and it's going to record the ticketing system and blah, 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 blah. And I said, that's great, but that's not how we behave.
yeah.
I want that phone to be picked up by somebody on my side. I just want the system to create the ticket so we have something to work from. And he was a bit taken aback.
Oh,
It's most back office functions, again, hate saying that,
yeah.
don't behave that way. So I've gone through a lot of people in my career here at Belfor where they just didn't get it. They didn't have the empathy. It was about a job for them. It was about a paycheck for them. They didn't really buy into it. And so they were not successful here at Belfor. But it's not just Belfor. One of my prior jobs was at a staffing company, Holston Staffing Company. And I talked about this when I did the industry speaker presentation for Virtual Congress, where they came in and a guy said, his paycheck was completely wrong. And it wasn't anything that the staffing company did. It was the customer didn't give us all of his hours. Well, that was great, except now he's a new dad. He's got a baby at home and his pay's half of what it should be. And the answer to your point, Max, the company answer was, we'll catch it up on next week's paycheck. And I was new to the company and I walked in to the operation manager office at that time and said, that's not going to work for me. If that's the kind of company we are, then this is not the right place for me. He agreed. We changed the culture. We changed the answer. We put some standards in there, so we weren't writing manual checks all the time. But if it was, more than I think it was 50% of your paycheck, you got fixed immediately. If it was more than $50 or 5 hours, you got fixed immediately. There were some things like that, but you change that. And so when we talk about how can payroll impact the company culture, things like that, just finding new ways to take care of our employees.
Exactly. It reminds me of a time where we once did a study on moments that matter. So this was a big thing at the time in the overall HR organization, but also within payroll, where we went out and asked the workforce. I was about to say employees, we can't call them employees anymore. It's a workforce nowadays, right? Mm-hmm. Be careful there. We asked them, what are the moments that really matter? And we were super surprised. It was, super surprised. Nobody said their payroll or paycheck, because that's a given.
Right.
The moments that matter related to payroll was, I have a question, which ranged from all types of questions. But they said, if I have a question about payroll, it immediately is super important for me. I will be distracted until that question is answered.
Yeah.
So it became one of the top 5 moments that matter in the overall HR organization, because they realize whenever we do not answer this question or we leave someone in the dark, they will be less productive, they will be less happy at work, they will be less engaged. At the time, engagement was and still is also very important. So suddenly, while I was asking for all kinds of budget, Cari and Angelique, and I never got it, now I was in the top 5 of moments that matter for the workforce. And now I said, okay, so if you want me to, and the rule was the answer should be either 1 click away or 1 referral away. Because to your staffing example, you don't want to send the employee, well, we didn't have the hours, so go to someone else. Go to someone else and say, well, it wasn't me, it was your manager. And this employee gets frustrated, right? So we then said, well, if you want us to adhere to the 1 click away, we need really good self-service information, right? If you want us 1 referral away, that means that we have 2 tiers who need to be fully aware of all the legislative changes, of all the company policies. Nowadays, you probably say, oh, let's just do a chat bot, right? But to be honest, I get very frustrated with chatbots. I said, this is not the question that I asked you. Sorry, I don't understand. No, I know you don't understand. I need to repeat my question in 4 types of languages. I even use AI to translate my message for you, AI chatbot. Can you imagine? You're frustrated, like you just have a young baby. You need to buy diapers, and you don't have money. So chatbots, I love them, but hey, for a real burning question, you need to go there. Sorry, I got overly excited there. No. But moments that matter, and I'm just trying to encourage everyone, find the moments that matter in your organization. Through that, get kind of budget for change. Yeah.
That was the one perk of the software that I looked at yesterday. Yes, you got the chat box. Yes, you can put your question in. But in the top of the chat box, it said, click immediately for person.
Speak to a human.
So it just jumped right out to where we needed to be.
Exactly. Because if you want to reset your password, you can probably do it with a chatbot. But if you're going to say, hey, my effective tax rate went up with 3% while my benefits didn't change. Yes, I aged a year. Yes, I got another kid. But hey, can you tell me what happened? The chatbot's going to be, I don't know.
Please refer to whatever your country's tax legislator is.
Exactly. But I'm interested to see, Angelique, you're the Gen Z on the call.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about moments that matter in your payroll life, your payroll journey, right? What matters to you and your kind of generation, if I can be so bold to ask you to speak on behalf of your whole generation?
Yes, no, that's a good question. Actually, just on the chatbots thing quickly, I actually used to work for a conversational AI company, and the most typed in thing to any chatbot is speak to a human.
Yeah.
And that actually includes Gen Z. I can say, at least from my experience and my peers, that we find it equally as frustrating as other generations, to be honest. So from my experience, at least with payroll, I would have to agree with the human touch at the end of the day, because, well, we just wrote about this the other day, but the thing I think that really makes a difference is having that feeling of empathy, I suppose, from someone, which does come from payroll. And I think that extends to things such as pay transparency, that extends to things such as earned wage access, just so many things that are important for Gen Z, is being able to talk to someone real who's actually going to understand or empathize with you and come up with a solution that can actually fit to your lifestyle outside of work, because obviously work is a massive part of our life, but it's not our whole life. So having someone within the organization that can empathize with that, I think is going to be the top.
I'm sorry, Angelique, you said work's not our whole life?
Sorry, I was talking to payroll people.
There was something outside the room? No way. That's interesting, Angelique. Eye-opening insight there. Thank you. But
that's the Gen Z in me.
but I sometimes say, we have this little phone, right? So, and we are more digitally connected than ever. But I think on a personal level, we might be more disconnected than ever. And I think that's maybe where that craving comes from, a little bit of empathy. And if you take it back to employee questions, I don't know, this pivoted into employee question, but I think it is super important if you have a question, right? Sometimes I also had team members, you may have had those too, Cari, you immediately go into a defensive mode, right? Somebody tells me I made an error. I am now going to write a whole very long email or a ticket response to justify that I'm right. And I used to observe that for like a couple of weeks. And then I said, why won't you send this person a chat and say, hey, I feel like you're very frustrated and you're probably right to feel frustrated because, you know, I wasn't explaining myself very well. Why don't we hop on a call, look at each other eye to eye and have a conversation about it instead of us typing anonymously to each other? And I found that across all the generations, everyone was super receptive to say, okay, you actually acknowledge that there is something, because although I might be technically right, the other end still has a question. Right? So somehow we still need to resolve it instead of me saying, well, I'll write the textbook stuff. I'll pull up the law for you. I'll add an Excel spreadsheet of how the calculation works. It doesn't matter. This person feels like they have a problem.
Yeah, I think when you approach things that way, the receiver of that email now feels like they were just talked down to. And that wasn't the goal of the conversation. The goal of the conversation is my paycheck was shorted $100.
Yes.
How are you going to fix it?
Exactly.
It isn't, how did it get to be short? They don't care. They just want the money. And so I experience that every single day with all levels of payroll people. Same thing with our HR department. We forget sometimes that the rest of the world is not as in tune to what we do as what we are.
Amazing, right?
Right? So the world doesn't revolve around us. And we have to sometimes, we have to fall on our sword. We very simply have to say, oh my gosh, I put $1 in instead of $10 in, and that's why your paycheck's short $100. Let me see what I can do to fix that. Let me escalate to my manager to see if I can get you a manual check, get you a wire transfer, something immediately. Or a lot of times, I think what people don't realize is when they have that conversation, yes, I screwed up. I'm so sorry. This is what happened on a very high level view. What can I do to help you?
Yeah.
You get a much different answer. All of a sudden, the temperature is reduced.
Yeah.
Your goal is to get them to wait till the next payroll cycle, which might be a week away here in the States, not a month away in a lot of countries. So all I need them to do is to wait one more week, and we'll just let it fix naturally through the payroll system.
Mm.
And when you just acknowledge that something bad happened, and here's our best solution, here's our worst solution, I can pay you now being the worst, I can pay you next week being the best, they're like, okay, I can wait the week. I'm okay. And then they are saying, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. All over the place. But at the beginning of the conversation, they were ready to attack. They were coming for your job and your kids. They were done.
Are you ready? Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think this also speaks to kind of the skill set of the payroll professional, right? Where we used to focus a lot on, can you do this country, or are you CPP, right, in the US, or have you worked with this platform or this system, which is all still relevant. But I think the interpersonal skills, the communication skills, especially now as technology goes up, I think those skills should move upwards as well. And we should look for hiring profiles that actually have those type of skill sets. Right. Maybe we should look to hire, instead of the data scientists that was on the rise, maybe we should ask for caretakers. Maybe we should ask for customer service people to pivot into the payroll profession.
I absolutely 100% agree with you. Payroll is not an education. You're not going to get it, at least here in the States, by going to any university. You're going to get a byproduct of it out of HR. You're going to get a little bit out of it out of accounting, out of a business degree, but you're not going to get payroll focused. Payroll focused is companies like Payo. That's all we do is educate that. Exactly. And so what I hope to see over the next number of years before I do exit stage right is that I can impact one college, one specialty accounting college, to say, you need a course in payroll. let's take the CPP course and stick it as an accredited minor in a degree program, something like that, so we can start driving payroll to that. But part of that, as you say, part of the data scientist, because it's still going to be in our world, that's got to be in our repertoire, is that we have to find the balance of finding the caretaker, the customer service rep, the person that has the empathy to deal with challenges as they come up.
Great. Well, I don't know, Angelique, you might be taking a CPP exams soon. I think, but I'll now put this on record, Cari, that I promised to Dan Dykes and others from PAYO that I will be taking the CPP exam in, I think, 1.5 or 2 years. So, oh boy, okay, I need to level up now. Oh, right, great. Thank you.
You should take it. We all know that. I mean, you all know my story. I took it very late in life.
Yeah.
I always felt like I knew what I knew and nobody could tell me what I didn't know.
Well,
and then by educating myself, I realized exactly how much I didn't remember. And so it's important.
Well, since we are looking forward on the stage, I think, Cari, to kind of look forward to the future state when you enter another stage, because I think if you leave a stage, Cari, that will not be retirement for you. I think you are far too active to that. So we will be seeing a lot of you. But what do you think, if you would fast forward, what would be the biggest challenge payroll teams will face in the next couple of years, and how the payroll teams can evolve to kind of meet those challenges head on?
Wow, that's a big question. I have a lot of different ideas on where we're going to go in the payroll world. I do believe that as the world changes, as the financial world changes, payroll is going to be a bigger player. Again, and my focus is again PAYO in the U.S. and I know these things exist globally. I can't speak to them globally, so I focus on the U.S. But there are so many legislative changes that are coming, right? So the world's economy is changing, pay rates are changing, how we deal with people are changing, benefits are changing. There's so many things that we are in a faster moving state of evolution in the last 5 years than what I've experienced in the previous 39 years of my career. Mm-hmm. It's hard to keep up with things. Here in the United States, I think we're starting to, I don't want to say embrace, but we're starting to better understand the benefits that the European culture has, maternity leave, paternity leave, paid sick leave, longer vacations, those kind of things, finding better work-life balances. And when we do that, we have to really re-engage ourselves and our company and our business and our department structures on how we're going to accommodate all of those wonderful things. Fortunately or unfortunately, when all of the world changes around you, it changes the way payroll behaves. We have to now do things differently, pay different pay scales. We have more benefits to attend to. All of those things come into play. To be able to manage that, you really have to be, and you have to embrace the love of payroll. You have to be able to embrace a fast moving environment, be able to move as quickly as you possibly can. As the laws change, we fortunately or unfortunately in the United States, we probably get about 2 months notice, and we got to, stop, drop, and roll on everything else that happens to make it work.
Drop, pay on a roll. Exactly.
Right. Right. And so payroll people need to stay in the educational world.
So basically you're saying, whether you like it or not, the environments, the externals will change, and they will demand you to keep up with that change, whether you like it or not. So be prepared.
Exactly. We laugh when we talk about AI and the changes. There's so many opportunities for AI in the payroll world, as long as we don't lose the idea that AI is a computer. I'm a computer programmer by trade.
Yeah, you are.
It only will spit out what you put in.
Yeah.
Even when you think AI is learning, It's only learning what you're putting in. It's just a machine, just a machine. We have the individual thought. The machine does not and will never. And so we, as payroll people, as we embrace all these wonderful technologies that are coming up, we need to make sure that we have the controls and audits in place to control it.
So AI is based on actual intelligence that we deliver.
Yep, I like that.
So before we wrap up, I wanted to ask you, Cari, for one last piece of advice for payroll professionals who want to be the one in their team or in their organization to initiate that change and kind of change payroll's perception within their organizations. So what would be your parting advice?
You got to sell yourself. You have to learn. You have to be the expert. You got to sell yourself. You have to remember, I say it so many times, I feel like it's a greedy card now for me, like it's on my business card. Payroll is operational. It is not transactional. You have to recognize yourself as a valuable member of the operation. When you do that, others will perceive you the same way. But if you sit in the background and you play the poor woe is me, no, I can't get a seat at the table, nobody wants to talk about me. If you're putting that out there, that's what people are perceiving and that's what people are receiving. So you own your destiny. Make sure that you have the wealth of knowledge behind you. You have the education, degrees, certifications, whatever it is, to be able to speak eloquently on your expertise. Don't be afraid to step outside of your comfort zone. Ask questions. It's the only way we learn.
Wow, it almost makes me think, Cari, don't be outside of the box. Just leave your box at home.
Exactly. Exactly.
Right.
I love that. Just, yeah, we don't know what we can accomplish unless we try.
Yeah.
And trust me, the CEOs of these mega corporations did not get there without experiencing failure. Is what did they do with the failure? How did they flip it around? How did they turn it around? What lessons did they learn from it to drive them forward? And so you just have to embrace that.
100%. Well, thank you so much, Cari, for joining us. And thank you, Max, as well, both of you for sharing your insights with myself and with the listeners. It's been very enlightening today. And I feel very inspired coming out of this. Maybe I'm going to leave marketing and come into payroll.
Yes, join us.
Come along.
Yes, thank you all for listening. You can catch up on our episodes on YouTube or on your favorite podcast platforms, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So please leave a like, a comment or a review, and subscribe so you can keep up to date on all our future episodes as well. So with that, I wish you goodbye and thank you again for listening.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Cari.